Hey guys, today's story is a little different. I was at our family's Thanksgiving dinner, the dining room warm with the scent of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie, the clink of silverware mingling with soft laughter. The table was set with Mom's heirloom china, relatives gathered, their faces glowing under the chandelier's light. Then Dad stood, glass raised for a toast, his voice booming, "To my children's success except Maria, who's still a failure." The words struck like a frost, silencing the room, my heart plummeting as every eye turned to me. I'd spent years building my career, supporting our family, only to be branded a disgrace in front of them all. My name's Maria Thompson, 35, a tech entrepreneur who's poured her soul into her startup and our family's legacy. To be humiliated, my efforts dismissed by the man I'd strived to make proud, was a wound that burned deeper than I could name. And if you think karma's slow, wait until you hear this. So, before you get pulled in, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually believe that betrayal always comes back around. Drop a comment, where are you watching from, and have you ever had someone betray your trust? Now sit back, let the room go quiet and let me tell you how it really went down. The dining room was a tableau of stunned faces, the warmth of the meal turning cold as Dad's words lingered, his gaze fixed on me, unyielding. My siblings, Mark and Ellen, sat nearby, their eyes on their plates, their silence a second blow that cut as sharply as his verdict. My chest tightened, rage and shame colliding like a storm, but I kept my face composed, my hands folded in my lap, nails pressing into my palms to anchor me. I'd built a tech startup from scratch, securing $5 million in venture funding, creating jobs, and contributing to our family's finances, covering Dad's car payments, funding Ellen's grad school. Yet, in one sentence, he'd erased me, branding me a failure while praising Mark's law firm and Ellen's teaching career. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was public, a declaration that I'd never measure up to his expectations. I met Dad's eyes, his stern expression a challenge, daring me to react, to give him the outburst he could use to justify his verdict. Mark shifted uncomfortably, Ellen's fork paused mid-air, their complicity a weight that deepened my isolation. I thought of the past year, Dad's curt replies when I shared startup milestones, his private talks with Mark about family direction, Ellen's snide remarks about my risky ventures. The signs had been there, faint but persistent, like cracks in a foundation I'd ignored, trusting my hard work would earn his respect. Now, his Thanksgiving toast was a power play, a move to diminish me in front of our kin, to cement his narrative of my failure. My first instinct was to fire back, to list every dollar I'd raised, every job I'd created, every sacrifice I'd made for them. But a scene would only fuel his story, painting me as the ungrateful daughter he wanted others to see, a role I refused to play. I stood, my chair scraping softly against the hardwood floor, the sound cutting through the uneasy murmurs. "I'll pass on dessert," I said, my voice steady, almost serene, though my heart pounded like a war drum. Dad's jaw twitched, surprise flickering, but he didn't speak. I walked out, weaving through the dining room, past aunts and cousins whose whispers trailed me like a wake, my head high despite the weight of their stares. The front door clicked shut, the crisp November air hitting my face, my car waiting in the driveway. I didn't look back, but my mind was racing, piecing together a response. Dad thought he'd won, that his words would break me in front of the family. He'd forgotten who I was, a strategist who built companies, who turned setbacks into triumphs, who knew his vulnerabilities better than anyone. In my car, I sat still, the engine off, the quiet amplifying my thoughts, the distant hum of the house a fading echo. My hands gripped the wheel, not from fear, but from a resolve taking root like steel forged in fire. I'd given everything to our family, time, money, loyalty, but Dad had rewritten me as a failure, a role I refused to accept. My anger cooled, shifting into something precise, unyielding, strategy. I wasn't fighting for his approval, I was fighting for my worth, my place in a legacy he couldn't claim without me. A memory sparked. I'd developed software for his construction business, a system that streamlined $15 million in projects, contracts I'd secured through my tech network. Those weren't just tools, they were my leverage, a power he'd underestimated. I pulled out my phone, texting Mia, my best friend and a venture capitalist who knew my value. Her reply was instant. He said what? Call me. Her words were a spark, a hint of the influence I still held, a truth Dad would soon face. I started the car, the engine's hum a vow, the house fading in my rearview mirror. His humiliation was his choice, my response would prove him wrong. Some labels don't just wound you, they hand you the keys to rewrite the story you were meant to tell. The November chill clung to my car as I drove away from the family's Thanksgiving dinner, Dad's failure label, except Maria, who's still a failure, searing through my thoughts like a brand. His public humiliation, delivered in front of our kin, had been a calculated wound, but my steady exit, head high, was the first step in uncovering a truth that could shift the ground beneath him. I wasn't just a tech entrepreneur with a $5 million startup, I was the architect of his construction business's software, a system that streamlined $15 million in projects, built on partnerships I'd forged. Those weren't just tools, they were my leverage, a power he'd overlooked in his arrogance. My hands gripped the wheel, the engine's rumble a steady pulse, my mind a sharpened blade ready to confirm my control and wield it against him. I wasn't fighting for his pride, I was fighting for my worth, and I'd start by unearthing my hidden influence. I reached my apartment, the quiet broken by the soft clink of my keys on the counter, the living room dim under a single lamp's glow. I sat at my desk, opening my laptop, its screen casting a stark light over a clutter of startup pitch decks and project files, proof of my years shaping both my company and Dad's. My first task was to map my influence, buried in software code, client emails, and contract logs. I pulled up my project files for Thompson Construction, scanning names: Holt Builders, Riverstone Developers, 3 others key clients whose $15 million in contracts relied on my software for scheduling and cost tracking. I'd built the system, trained their teams, and secured their trust through my tech network. My pulse quickened, a quiet thrill at the power I held, but I needed to verify their loyalty. Clients were pragmatic, and Dad's charm could sway them if he claimed my work. I logged into the software's admin portal, my credentials still active, the dashboard showing active projects, a small victory he hadn't revoked. I opened an email from Holt Builders CEO, Tom Ellis, the lead client with a $6 million contract, his trust in me sealed through a software demo I'd led. A message from last month stood out, his tone warm: "Maria, your system's our lifeline." I saved it, a spark of confirmation, but doubt crept in. Clients were loyal to efficiency, not sentiment, and Dad might spin my role as minor. I needed more than goodwill, proof of my impact. I pulled up project analytics, my fingers racing across the keyboard, reports showing $15 million in revenue tied to my software, 30% cost savings from my scheduling algorithms, client retention I'd driven. The numbers were my armor, a truth he couldn't rewrite, but a conflict-stirred resolve clashed with a pang of self-betrayal. I'd built this system for his business, believing it was ours, only to be blindsided by his rejection. Had my loyalty to him been my own misstep? I stood, pacing the room, the hardwood cool beneath my feet, the city's hum a faint pulse beyond the window. My mind churned, piecing together the implications of my leverage. Those clients weren't just contracts, they were my allies, their trust a currency Dad couldn't match. I thought of his stern glare at the dinner, his praise for Mark and Ellen, his dismissal of me as a failure. He'd assumed the business was his, that my contributions would hold without me. The realization was a quiet power, a shift that steadied my hands, but the weight of my next move pressed in. Pulling the software or redirecting the clients would get Thompson Construction, a legacy I'd strengthened with my own sweat. Was I ready to burn it down for justice, to risk my family ties forever? The conflict was a shadow, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the strategy forming like a gathering storm. I sat back down, opening my call log to confirm recent talks with Tom, who'd praised my latest software update. His voicemail, still saved, was a weapon I'd used to remind him where loyalty lay. "Maria, you're the reason we're on track." I drafted a list of the 5 key clients, their contracts, their ties to me, each name a brick in my counterstrike. I also found a contract amendment, buried in a shared drive, assigning Jake a consulting role in the business, dated weeks before Thanksgiving, proof Dad had planned my marginalization. The evidence was a blade, sharpening my focus, a reminder that I'd built his success, not him. I texted Mia, my venture capitalist friend, to brief her further. Her reply was swift, "He's clueless. Let's meet." Her support was a lifeline, easing the isolation of Dad's sting, but it deepened my conflict. This wasn't just about him, it was about a family I'd poured my life into, now fractured by his choice. I stood at my window, the skyline a faint map of ambition, my reflection a woman ready to fight. My plan was taking shape: confirm client loyalty, strategize with Mia, and redirect the software's benefits to a new venture, proving Dad wrong. He thought he'd broken me at his table, but I held the strings to his empire. My resolve was a flame, burning bright, unquenched by doubt. I returned to my desk, my dossier growing, each piece a step toward justice. Dad's label was his misstep, my response would be his lesson. I opened my notebook, jotting the first steps: calls to Tom, Riverstone, a meeting with Mia ready to wield my hidden leverage. Some failures don't just sting, they become the spark that rewrites the legacy you were meant to claim. The morning chill lingered in my apartment, its soft light filtering through the windows, casting a glow across the desk where my dossier on Thompson Construction lay, brimming with proof of my influence over the $15 million in projects tied to my software system. Dad's Thanksgiving toast, "Except Maria, who's still a failure," had been a calculated wound, but uncovering my leverage, built through years of trust with clients like Holt Builders and Riverstone developers, had armed me with a weapon to challenge his empire. Now, I needed allies, loyal confidants who'd help me redirect those clients, a move that would cripple his business and prove him wrong. Mia's venture capital expertise was a spark, but I needed more: people who knew the software's mechanics, who'd seen my deals, who could fortify my strategy to reclaim my worth. My coffee steamed, its earthy scent grounding me as I reached for my phone, my fingers deliberate, my heart a steady forge ready to assemble a team that would make Dad's betrayal burn. My first call was to Mia, my venture capitalist friend, whose market savvy had backed my startup's growth. I'd briefed her last night, but now I laid out the full plan: Dad's public humiliation, my control over the software, and my intent to pull key clients to a new venture, leaving Thompson Construction gutted. "This is a power move, Maria," she said, her voice alight with strategy. "I'll connect with Tom Ellis at Holt and pitch a new platform." Her commitment was a flame, igniting my confidence, but it also stirred a conflict. Gratitude for her loyalty clashed with guilt for pulling her into a family feud. I'd kept my struggles with Dad private, even from Mia, out of a sense of duty to maintain family harmony. That duty was gone, but the weight of involving others in my fight pressed heavily, a reminder of the business I might fracture. Next, I contacted Javier, my lead software engineer at the startup, who'd helped develop the construction software and knew its integration with Dad's clients. I called him, my voice calm but urgent, explaining Dad's betrayal, my leverage, and my plan to redirect the clients to a new platform. "He called you what?" His tone was sharp, his loyalty fierce. "Those clients need your system, Maria." "I'm in." He offered to update the software for a new venture and contact Riverstone's project manager, ensuring their alignment. His trust was a brick in my foundation, but the responsibility of leading this strike grew heavier. This was my wound, my battle, and while their support was vital, I couldn't lean on them forever. The conflict was a quiet tension, but I channeled it into action, focusing on the strategy taking shape like a storm rolling over the plains. We met at my apartment, turning the living room into a command center, the air thick with the rustle of project reports and the clink of coffee mugs. I spread out my dossier: client emails, analytics showing $15 million in revenue, a contract amendment proving Dad's plan to marginalize me, each piece a weapon. Mia reviewed her pitch deck, suggesting we frame the client shift as a next-gen platform to protect their projects, pitching it to industry blogs for impact. Javier shared software specs, noting key integrations where I'd won client trust, offering to back my calls with tech demos. "They'll follow you," he said, his eyes steady. Their expertise was a tapestry, weaving my plan into something unassailable, but I felt the pressure of orchestration. This wasn't just about exposing data, it was about proving I could rebuild, not just destroy, a legacy I'd shaped. We strategized over breakfast, the city's hum a faint pulse beyond the window. Mia proposed timing the client outreach for maximum effect, coordinating contract shifts to hit Dad simultaneously, ensuring he'd face a unified front. Javier suggested drafting a joint client statement, citing operational instability to justify their move, a move that would shield our motives while amplifying the blow. I outlined my role, leading calls with Tom at Holt and Riverstone's manager, coordinating with the other 3 clients, and preparing a press leak to frame the narrative. The plan was precise, but doubt crept in. Was I torching the business I'd strengthened, risking family ties for vengeance? The conflict was raw. Part of me still cherished the company, the clients, the life I'd poured into it. I thought of Dad's stern glare, Mark's silence, Ellen's complicity at the dinner. They'd erased me, and that fueled my resolve to strike back. I stood, clearing plates, my movements deliberate, a quiet power in my focus. Mia watched me, her investor's gaze softening. "You're not just fighting for you," she said. "You're fighting for what's right." Her words were a beacon, slicing through my doubt, reaffirming my purpose. We wrapped up, Mia and Javier promising to follow through pitch decks, software updates while I prepared for Tom. I sat back down, my dossier expanding, each piece a step toward justice. The skyline glittered outside, a reminder of what I'd built: startups launched, systems created, a life of impact. Dad thought he'd broken me at his table, but I held the strings to his empire. My resolve was a flame, unquenched by fear. I opened my notebook, refining the client scripts, ready to wield my alliances. Dad's label was his misstep, my response would prove him wrong. I closed my laptop, the screen fading, and stood in the quiet, the city's rhythm a heartbeat. My fight wasn't over, but its purpose was clear: to challenge his empire and rise anew. Some battles don't just end a label, they forge a legacy you were always meant to claim. The city's midday sun streamed through my apartment's windows, casting a bright glow over the living room, now a war room cluttered with project reports and client emails, proof of my influence over the $15 million in contracts tied to my software at Thompson Construction. Dad's Thanksgiving toast, except Maria, who's still a failure, had been a calculated wound, but with Mia and Javier's support, my strategy to redirect those clients to a new platform was primed to prove him wrong. Today, I'd execute that reversal, contacting Tom Ellis at Holt Builders, Riverstone Developers Manager, and 3 other clients to shift their projects, crippling Dad's empire. I'd confirmed their loyalty yesterday, their trust in me a weapon he couldn't counter. I sat at my desk, my laptop glowing with call scripts and analytics, my phone ready for the morning's work. I wore a crisp blazer, my reflection in the window calm but resolute, my heart a steady drumbeat marching toward justice. I started with Tom, the lead client with a $6 million contract, his trust in me forged through a software demo that had streamlined his projects. I called him, the city's hum a faint pulse beyond my window, my voice calm but deliberate. I laid out Dad's rejection, framing it as a reckless move that kindized the business's stability, citing my software's $15 million in revenue and Jake's unprepared role. "You backed me, Tom," I said, my tone resonant. "Without my system, Thompson's a risk." His pause was brief, then his voice firm, "I'm with you, Maria. We'll shift to your new platform." His commitment was a spark, igniting my resolve, but a conflict-stirred triumph clashed with a pang of loss. I'd built Thompson Construction's success, its projects my creation, and now I was dismantling it. The cost wasn't just Dad's, it was a legacy I'd poured my life into, workers I'd trained now facing uncertainty. I pushed the ache aside, focusing on the next call, my resolve a quiet power anchoring me. Riverstone's manager, Maria Lopez, was next, her $4 million contract sealed through my software's cost-saving features. I dialed, my fingers steady, the sun's glare a backdrop to my words. I detailed Dad's betrayal, emphasizing the business's reliance on my system, my client relationships. "Jake can't match my track record," I said, my voice even but piercing. Maria's response was swift, "We're moving to you. Your software's our edge." Her words were a brick in my counterstrike, but the conflict deepened. Each client's shift was a blow to the business I'd loved, the team I'd supported, now at risk because of my move. I thought of the construction crews, their trust in my system, unaware of the fallout. Was I punishing them for Dad's dismissal? The tension was a shadow, but I pressed on, calling the remaining 3 clients, each conversation echoing the first shock, then loyalty, then commitment to shift $15 million in total contracts. By 1 p.m., all 5 clients had pledged to move their projects to my new platform, Thompson Tech Solutions, a name Mia had suggested to reclaim my stake. Mia joined me at the apartment, her tablet showing the client statements Javier had helped draft, citing operational instability as the cause. "This'll gut him," she said, her eyes gleaming. Javier texted, confirming he'd updated the software new APIs, enhanced Security to ensure a seamless transition, and leaked a tip to a construction trade blog, framing the shift as a crisis of Dad's making. Their coordination was a tapestry, weaving my plan into an unassailable force, but the weight of its impact pressed harder. I stood, pacing the living room, the hardwood cool beneath my feet, the city's buzz a stark contrast to the storm I'd unleashed. Thompson Construction was Dad's to lose, but it was mine to reshape, a legacy I'd built now teetering by my hand. I sat back down, reviewing the statements, each client's words a testament to my influence. Maria's system was our backbone. Maria's, we trusted her, not Thompson Sr. The documents were a quiet power, a truth Dad couldn't spin. I finalized the press release with Mia, ensuring it would hit by evening, amplifying the client shift's impact. The plan was precise, but a memory flickered. Dad's rare nod after a project launch, his hand on my shoulder during a site visit, moments I'd cherished. I'd fought for his business, but he'd chosen to brand me a failure, and that fueled my resolve to strike. I thought of Mark's silence, Ellen's complicity, Dad's stern glare at the dinner. They'd underestimated me, and that was their fatal flaw. The clock ticked past 3 p.m., my phone buzzing with confirmations, clients ready, statements finalized, leak set. I stood at my window, the skyline a reminder of what I'd built. Startups launched, systems created, a life of impact. Dad thought he'd broken me at his table, but I'd pulled the strings of his empire, and by evening, his business would be hobbled. My resolve was aflame, unquenched by sorrow. I returned to my desk, my notebook open, jotting notes for Thompson Tech Solutions launch meetings with clients, a new software rollout. Mia and Javier's support was a steady hum, their faith in me a foundation stronger than Dad's construction sites. Dad's label was his choice, my response was his undoing. I closed my laptop, the screen fading, and stood in the quiet, the city's rhythm a heartbeat. My fight wasn't over, but its purpose was clear: to prove him wrong and rise anew. Some reversals don't just end a label, they build a legacy you were always meant to own. The city's late afternoon haze settled over my apartment, its light dimming through the windows, casting a muted glow across the living room where my dossier on Thompson Construction now rested, a testament to the $15 million in client contracts I'd redirected to Thompson Tech Solutions. Dad's Thanksgiving toast, except Maria, who's still a failure, had ignited a betrayal that fueled my plan, executed with Mia and Javier's support, to pull Tom Ellis, Maria Lopez, and 3 other clients, gutting his empire. By evening, those contracts were mine, leaving Thompson Construction a hollow shell, its revenue slashed overnight. The fallout was unfolding, his business crumbling, family dynamics reshaped by my strategic blow. Yet, the triumph was bittersweet, shadowed by a quiet sorrow for the empire I'd strengthened, now faltering under his name. I sipped my coffee, its bitterness grounding me, my resolve a steady flame navigating the wreckage I'd wrought. My phone buzzed with updates, Mia's text first, Thompson's in freefall. Dad's panicking. I opened my laptop, the screen glowing with construction trade news, a headline blaring, Thompson Construction loses $15 million in contracts amid leadership crisis. Javier's press leak had landed, framing Dad's mismanagement as the cause, my name absent but my influence undeniable. Social media was alight, clients praising Thompson Tech Solutions, industry insiders speculating, local contractors shocked at the firm's collapse. Dad's business was hemorrhaging, its project sites likely stilled, a ghost of the operation I'd optimized. I called Mia, my voice even as I processed the fallout client statements citing operational instability, Dad's desperate calls to Tom and Maria, Mark's failed attempt to salvage a smaller deal. "He's finished," Mia said, her tone fierce. Javier followed, noting layoffs had begun, the firm's reputation in tatters. Their updates were a lifeline, but a conflict-stirred vindication clashed with guilt. I'd reclaimed my worth, but at the cost of a business I'd loved, workers I'd trained now facing uncertainty. I scanned the client statements, each a testament to my influence. Tom's, Maria's software was our edge. Maria's, we trusted her, not Thompson Sr. The firm was collapsing, its foundation cracked, and I'd lit the fuse, but the weight of its ruin pressed hard. I stood, pacing the living room, the hardwood cool beneath my feet, the city's hum a faint pulse beyond the window. I thought of the construction crews, their trust in my system, now caught in the fallout. Had I punished them for Dad's dismissal? The conflict was raw, a tension between justice and destruction, my legacy versus the empire I'd shaped. I'd fought for Thompson Construction, but they'd chosen Dad's narrative, and that fueled my resolve to see this through, to ensure his failure label was his alone to bear. I met Javier at a local diner, its air thick with grease and chatter, to review the aftermath. He slid a tablet across, showing the firm's financials: revenue slashed, loans called in, a foreclosure risk on 2 sites. "You broke his empire," he said, his eyes gleaming. He shared Tom's plan to expand his contract with Thompson Tech Solutions, Maria's interest in new projects, a signal that my influence endured beyond the firm's ruin. I nodded, but my thoughts drifted to the project sites, once alive with my software's efficiency, now likely idle. I'd wanted Dad to face consequences, not to bury the business I'd built. Javier sensed my hesitation, his voice softening. "You didn't break this, Maria." He did. His words were a quiet power, a reminder that my fight was righteous, but the cost was a family I'd loved, now fractured by their complicity. By afternoon, Mia sent a legal update. Dad's lawyer had reached out, proposing a meeting to discuss transitions, a sign he was buckling under my move's weight. Thompson Tech Solutions was thriving, contracts secure, my name synonymous with innovation. But as I walked through my apartment, its cozy warmth a contrast to the coldness of that Thanksgiving dinner, a memory surfaced: Dad's rare smile during a site visit, Mark's arm around me at a family barbecue, moments I'd cherished. The loss was a faint sting, a reminder that I'd fought for them, but they'd chosen exclusion. I didn't need their approval anymore, I needed to build, to rise. I sat at my desk, jotting plans for a new software module, a cloud-based platform for smaller contractors, rooted in my vision of efficiency, with Tom and Maria as anchors. The day closed with a call from Javier, confirming 2 more clients had signed with Thompson Tech Solutions, former Thompson Construction accounts bolstering my platform. I stood at my window, the skyline stretching beyond the city, and let the reality settle. Dad's business was gone, the family's dynamics reshaped, and I'd orchestrated it with a truth he couldn't spin. My resolve was steady, a flame unquenched by sorrow. I thought of Mark's silence, Ellen's complicity, Dad's stern glare. They'd tried to label me a failure, but I'd made them see me, feel my absence. Thompson Construction was their ruin, but it wasn't my home. I closed my laptop, the screen fading, and stood in the quiet, the city's rhythm a heartbeat. My fight wasn't over, but its purpose had shifted to create, not destroy. Some reckonings don't just end a label, they clear the ground for a legacy you were always meant to own. The city's dawn light poured through my apartment's windows, casting a warm glow across the living room, now free of the dossier that had fueled my triumph over Dad's betrayal. His Thanksgiving toast, "Except Maria, who's still a failure," had ignited a fire, and my redirection of $15 million in client contracts to Thompson Tech Solutions, with Mia and Javier's support, had shattered his construction empire, leaving Thompson Construction a bankrupt shell. Tom Ellis, Maria Lopez, and 3 others had followed me, gutting his revenue and reshaping family dynamics in a single, devastating strike. Yet, the victory was bittersweet, shadowed by a quiet sorrow for the business I'd strengthened, its project sites now silent. Now, I turned to forging a new legacy, reflecting on the justice served and the path I'd carve. I sipped my coffee, its earthy warmth a steady anchor, my heart a calm forge ready to build a future free from his shadow. I began with purpose, grounding myself in Thomson Tech Solutions rhythm. Each morning, I refined software modules in my leased downtown office, its open layout a canvas for innovation, envisioning a cloud-based platform for contractor scalable, affordable, built for efficiency. I named it Forge Platform, a nod to the strength I'd create, a contrast to the firm I'd left in ruins. The work was mine, a declaration of independence from the construction sites I'd once optimized, now foreclosed or faded. But as I coded new features, memories surfaced: Dad's nod during a project walkthrough, Mark's laughter at a family cookout, moments I'd cherished. The loss was a faint sting, a conflict between the woman who'd fought for them and the one who'd had to prove them wrong. I'd wanted their pride, but their betrayal had forced me to choose myself. I pushed the ache aside, focusing on Forge, a legacy I'd shape one algorithm at a time. I met Mia at the office, its bare walls buzzing with potential, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with printer ink. She slid a tablet across, showing contracts with Tom, Maria, and 3 others, their $18 million in deals fueling Forge's growth. "You've outshone him," she said, her eyes bright. Her faith was a spark, reinforcing my strength, but I didn't dwell on Dad's ruin. I thanked her, sharing plans for a contractor training program, workshops, certifications, a hub for small firms. Her nod was a quiet promise, a bond forged in the fire of my fight. I'd chosen allies who saw my worth, not my absence, and their trust was a quiet power, a foundation for a legacy untainted by Dad's dismissal. But doubt lingered: could I outshine the empire I'd lost, or was I chasing a ghost of past glory? The conflict was a challenge, but I embraced it, drafting a pitch for a national construction tech conference, a step toward a future I'd define. Javier joined us, his laptop open to platform analytics, user growth, efficiency metrics showing Forge's traction. "You're rewriting the industry," he said, his voice steady. His words were a beacon, cutting through the sorrow of Thomson Construction's layoffs, its silent cranes. I stood in the office, the whiteboard filling with plans, and felt a shift: not just victory, but renewal. I didn't want to be defined by Dad's fall, but by what I'd create. I walked through the space, its potential a home I'd reclaimed, and jotted ideas for a community grant program, tech scholarships, small contractor funding, giving back what I'd learned. The act of planning was a spark, a vision of a platform that stood for progress, not failure, rooted in my values, not family feuds. By afternoon, I scouted a second office site, a loft with river views, its open space as a canvas for Forge's expansion. The work was exhilarating, but a memory of Dad's weathered hands, guiding mine on a site, flickered, a reminder of the father I'd lost. I didn't need his pride anymore, I needed to rise, to build a legacy that outshone his betrayal. I called Tom, now a partner in Forge, to discuss the conference pitch, his voice proud: "You're doing what Thomson never could." His faith was a quiet power, a reminder that my fight was for creation, not just justice. I stood on the loft's balcony, the city stretching beyond, and let the reality settle. Dad's empire was gone, the family's dynamics reshaped, and I'd orchestrated it with a truth he couldn't spin. As dusk fell, I sat at my desk, my notebook open, plans for Forge's training program and grants spilling across the pages. Mia and Javier texted, their support a steady hum, ideas for the conference pitch already sparking. I thought of Thomson Construction, now a fading name, and Dad's silence, a lesson he'd carry. Justice wasn't his ruin, it was my rise, a life built on my terms. The conflict was resolved, a quiet strength forged in his betrayal, now a foundation for growth. I lit a candle, its cedar scent soft, and let the stillness envelop me. My path was clear, not defined by his loss, but by what I'd create. My notebook closed, heavy with possibility, and I stood in the quiet, the city's rhythm a heartbeat. Dad's label was his mistake, Forge was my answer. Some legacies don't just end, they become the world you were always meant to shape. The months that followed bloomed slowly, like spring over open fields. Thomson Tech Solutions thrived, its Forge platform scaling, the training program empowering contractors, each success a thread in a legacy I'd woven. Thomson Construction vanished, its sites sold, Dad's name a whisper where mine echoed loud. I didn't seek his remorse or Mark's apology, I sought my peace, found in the hum of a bustling office, the trust of a team I'd chosen, the joy of a life I'd crafted. Mia and Javier stayed close, their bond a family stronger than blood. I'm not the Maria who chased approval, who tied her worth to a father's praise. I'm sharper now, forged by betrayal, but not hardened freed. Pain doesn't just wound, it teaches you to build better, to choose yourself. Forge is my mirror, its impact reflecting my resilience, my rebirth. I stand in my office, the skyline framing my vision, and feel a calm that runs deep. This isn't the end of my story, but it's the end of his and mine. I've risen, not as a failure, but as a woman who knows her worth is wherever she creates it. The city glows, the night soft around me, and I am whole,